I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to Conversations with Al McFarlane. Always loving the music of Gary Hines, Sounds of Blackness, the tune Reparations, a tune released on Juneteenth and part of a suite of new music celebrating the group's 50th anniversary. Great music, great creativity, great message. Time for reparations. Well, we want to begin today by looking at first of all, thanking participants in the program. My cousin, retired Dean Emeritus Burnell Venable Powell, former Dean of the University of South Carolina Law School, my friend and colleague and brother, I would say Brother Yusuf Mjini, and my sister, Brenda Lyle Gray. Brenda and Burnell and I were all in kindergarten together, so we've been around for a little bit. I'm not going to tell you guys his age, but I'm 74, just about. So we've been on this trek for a minute. And
I'm pleased to be the youngster on the program at 73, Al.
There you go. Okay. Well, you know, what's important to me, Yusuf, and what I treasure is that this is an idea that actually Burnett had given me a while back that I didn't act on, still will. We were all part of the class of 65. And back in 64, 65, Burnell said, wouldn't it be great to do something called 65 at 65, reflections of the people who were in the class of 65 as they were turning 65 years old. So I wasn't able to act on it, but I think it's a brilliant idea. And this kind of conversation moves us in that direction. And we are elders. We've been around for a long time. And I think we have valid comments to make and clarity of mind and an opportunity to shed some light, to have some fun, challenging each other, challenging the community on issues and ideas that are in community today. So that's the spirit of this conversation. And I so appreciate Dean Burnell Venable Powell and you, Yusuf Mjini. Normally we have Clinton Collins, the Minneapolis attorney, and Kamal King, the Atlanta attorney, who was also part of our class cohort in Kansas City as well. And Brenda, obviously, I value and treasure your presence and participation in our lifelong friendship here. So I wanted to throw a couple of things out for conversation. Before I do that, though, maybe you, Burnell, or Yusuf, or Brenda have something top of mind that you want to make sure we get into in the course of the next hour.
Nicole Hannah Jones.
What is it?
Nicole Hannah Jones.
Okay. Excellent. Great.
Burnell,
what do you think?
And I just wanted to make sure that we noted the fact that Rudy Giuliani has been temporarily suspended from yet another bar. The DC bar has put him on temporary suspension. Yeah. And I didn't want that to
the dye running down his cheeks, Burnell, will match his prison uniform nicely.
Indeed.
Burnell, I think I'd like to have the question that I had sent you about qualified immunity and the police union. I'd like to have that answered. One of my students had sent that to me. What happens to the police union if because I think we don't have it in New Mexico anymore, and it's not in Colorado. They've taken it out. So, I'd like to know what happens with the police union and all their power if these states begin to get rid of it.
It's a worthy topic, and I want to say something about your opening remarks, Al, because while we may be in the twilight of our lives, Dr. King said anybody can be a leader because anybody can be of service to the community. And I would like to think of the four of us as servant leaders who have a legacy of service and support in the Black community. And that's why I bring up Nicole Hannah Jones. And I think she sets a tradition that any and every person who considers themselves a Black or African-American journalist should aspire to.
Well, that's great. We're going to start with Nicole Hannah-Jones, but I'll say that I sent 2 notes out to you all about possible topics as well. One was Attorney General Keith Ellison's statement in today's Tribune newspaper questioning Judge Cahill's consideration or lack of consideration of the trauma experienced by African-American children who were present at the event of the death of George Floyd at the hand of Minneapolis police officers, Derek Chauvin and company. So that's one thing. And then the second thing that I had noted as a possible discussion was to do with an article that another friend of mine published in the Star Tribune today. It's an article by attorney Marshall Tannick, and the headline reads that there is what is the similarity between the Bill Cosby court cases and the new cases coming up against the Donald Trump organization. So interesting information. So a lot of things to cover. Probably can't cover it all, but we can get started. And let me begin by asking you, Youssef, to give the background. What is the Nicole Hannah-Jones story? What's the context?
Nicole Hannah-Jones is a correspondent with the New York Times Magazine, and she was one of the principal investigators on an effort that took almost a year to complete called the 1619 Project. And people who haven't heard of it can go to the library, can look it up online, can order a copy from the New York Times store, or look at it online. It examined the legacy of slavery, and it was originally published in 2019 and looked at the legacy of slavery 400 years later. Nicole received a Pulitzer Prize for the opening essay which she wrote to the 1619 Project, and it was published in lieu of the New York Times Sunday magazine as a separate magazine itself within the Sunday New York Times paper. While we're talking about awards, Miss Hannah-Jones has also received the MacArthur Genius Award. She's also received the Peabody Award, so she is a very distinguished and acknowledged journalist, 30 years experience with the New York Times, and she was offered a tenured position in the School of Journalism as the chair of race and investigative journalism at the University of North Carolina. And the school is named after the publisher of the Arkansas Gazette newspaper, who is noted for his extreme conservatism, to put it civilly. And a number of white journalists since 1980 have been extended this same honor and have been immediately accepted in the University of North Carolina with full tenure, without exception and without question. But when the offer was extended to Nicole Hannah-Jones, immediately bells and whistles went off, and conservatives and rich, wealthy donors began pressing the trustees, the Board of Regents, the chancellor, the dean, and questioning her credentials, her background, questioning the 1619 Project and its authenticity and its divisiveness. And they withdrew the offer of tenure, which was made way last fall in 2020, and extended to her a 5-year contract with the promise that they would reconsider the tenure offer at the end of the 5-year contract after evaluating her performance and her behavior during that period. Well, Sister, bless her heart, immediately sought legal counsel and indicated that she intended to pursue litigation against the school for discrimination against her on a number of grounds. And the interesting thing is that with her came a $15 million grant. So you talk about looking a gift horse in the mouth and recommending orthodonture. Okay, they not only made this sister feel unwelcome, but insulted her and very clearly discriminated against her in the process, with all of these white journalists going back 40 years as a precedent to prove that she was being treated vastly different. And in the interim, she was offered similar positions with full tenure, excuse me, outstanding privileges and funding and license and academic freedom in a number of institutions. And when the board found out that she was exploring her legal options, they immediately, a week ago, held a vote and decided, after all, to grant her tenure. And she said, you know, all of my life, I've been treated like I should feel lucky to have obtained a place in these white institutions, contributing to white people and teaching and training and building the capacity of those white institutions and other white journalists. And I don't think so. You know, I'm going to take my skills and my talents and give them to a historically black college or university. And she accepted a fully tenured position as the Knight Chair of Race and Journalism at Howard University, and took the $15 million with her to Howard University. She intends to raise a total of $25 million for her efforts. And she started a project on race and investigative journalism, which is housed at Howard, and is starting another project on race, journalism, and democracy, which will also be housed at Howard. So she's got 3 initiatives. She's got $15 million toward a $25 million goal. And she will also be joined by Ta-Nehisi Coates, who the author of Between the World and Me, who has also recently accepted a fully tenured position at Howard University. So for those journalists and other black professionals who get their master's degrees and other advanced degrees and feel that they need to go to Hollywood or BlackRock or 30 Rock or the networks or to white institutions in order to prove their worth, I would encourage them to look at Sister Nicole Hannah-Jones as an example, because Carter G. Woodson said that his goal in life was to best use, and Carter G. Woodson was the dean of Black history, to best use his talents to serve and advance Black history and the Black community. And I think that Nicole Hannah-Jones has given us another example of ways in which we have an opportunity to do that. So beautiful, powerful, stunning, celebratory. We just can't think of enough adjectives to praise this sister for what she has done and what she continues to do. And the 1619 Project was such an amazing document of history, of literature, that looked at economics, culture, politics, the whole spectrum of the Black experience, and traced it back to when those first 20 slaves got off that good ship Jesus in the mouth of the James River in Jamestown, Virginia in 1619, and where we are today. And I was reading a book with a friend the other day that said the average wealth of Black families in America today is $11,000, and the average wealth of white families is like $193,000. And at the rate that we're going today, it will take 228 years for Black families to attain the wealth that white families, 228 years from today, for Black families on average to attain the wealth that white families have today. So we've got a big job to do. And I think we need to identify ways to do that within our own institutions wherever possible. So that is the incredible story, the history, and the contribution of Nicole Hannah-Jones. And I think we owe her more than a golf clap for setting an example for young Black people who are in higher education and going forward. To be like Dean Powell and yourself and Dr. Hayden and others who are setting a correct example for young Black people to follow.
What a wonderful explanation and presentation, Yusuf. Thank you so much. Two things come to mind with me. I don't know if either of you are familiar with the work of Dr. Greg Carr, who I think is the Dean of Africana Studies at Howard University, or Dr. Karen Hunter. And I'm not sure which university she was affiliated with, but they together are doing a project on YouTube every week, and they've created a virtual university. And their initiative is called The Narrative with a K, Knarrative. And they, I believe, are set to at least challenge, if not upend, traditional view of academic processes that we're used to, or at least bring another style and system and process for imparting knowledge and training into the mix. And they are motivated by the fact that every institution, including educational institutions, were shut down during COVID-19. And scholars like them took to the digisphere to communicate. And what they've done is effectively enrolled several 100,000 people to what they are announcing is the largest online classroom at this moment in the country. And so a number of people and scholars have been attracted, and it's kind of a self-building process where as people discover it, learn about it, examine it, and they find ways both to attach that bring their own gift and expertise and talent to the service of the project, but also gain at the same time. So that's one thing that comes to mind as I listen to this concern that you're revealing about, let me shut my phone off, I have to find it here, about Nicole Hannah Smith. The second thing though is, Burnell, that's your school. You taught, you were on the staff there at the law school at UNC. And what are your impressions of this story and of the situation?
Yes, I was on the faculty at the University of North Carolina for just about 18 years. And what I will say about this situation is that, first of all, Yusuf has, I think, wonderfully and concisely summarized what was going on from the standpoint of Nicole Hannah Jones. And I really can't add anything to that. What I can say, though, is that looking at it from the standpoint of someone who has been affiliated over a long time with the University of North Carolina, I think that this is one of the worst handled situations probably in the history of the university. What has always made the university, it has always viewed itself as the first public university. And
8% of the students are Black, Burnell.
By that, let me finish. By that, it meant that it was a university that was attempting to lead the public sector in terms of how it educated the population, the things that it focused on as an educational institution, its relationship to the society. This incident sets the university back substantially. Because the way in which it handled the situation was ham-fisted. It was not only insensitive to Professor, soon to be Professor Jones, but it was insensitive to all of us who have thought that the institution had a special claim to doing some things right. As to your point, Yusuf, I would never make the claim, nor would the University of North Carolina ever make the claim that it does everything right, or that it doesn't have, or that there is a vast opportunity, a vast room for improvement. So I won't argue with that particular statistic that you put forward, but I would say that what is most, I think, disturbing about this is that Jones is absolutely correct. She had already established herself. She didn't need the University of North Carolina to affirm her status as an intellectual leader in this country. And what I would say is that my own experience has pretty much tracked the kind of experience that Jones was explaining when she said that she was not going to accept the offer under present circumstances, and rather was going to go to the university, to Howard University. She specifically emphasized the fact that she had already established her credentials. Mm-hmm. I would say to other Blacks who are interested in academia, go wherever you need to go in order to establish your credentials. Once your credentials are established, however, be insistent on the fact that your currency is already validated, and that you want to be treated in the same way as any accepted scholar in the country.
Burnell, you'd be pleased to learn that the Black faculty, the Black student movement, the Black caucus in the state legislature, the University Faculty Association, the dean, and all of the faculty in the School of Journalism supported Nikole Hannah-Jones 100% from day one, and protested and let their concerns be known to the administration of the University of North Carolina and stood behind her. She flew down there last Friday to meet with the Black students and faculty to let them know what her decision was before it became public, because she felt she owed that to them because of their support for her since last November when the offer was first made. So they stood up and spoke with one voice in her support. And you're right, this is a black eye for the University of North Carolina, and it's going to hurt their ability to attract good talent. And anyone would be concerned about the restrictions on academic freedom, given the way that Nikole Hannah-Jones was treated. And Al, if I may, I thank you for pointing out the work on YouTube. It's amazing how much stuff is on there. I want to put in a plug for a brother that a lot of people surprisingly have not heard of. His name is Gerald Horne, Horne. And he has a number of lectures on YouTube, or you can Google his name. And John Henry Clark has passed on. Yosef Ben-Jochanan has passed on. We've lost a lot of our great Black truth-telling historians. Gerald Horne writes 3 or 4 books a year. He's written more than 40 books, and he teaches at a institution of, higher education in Houston. If you check out and listen to any of his interviews or any of his lectures, you'll be blown away. I mean, he is Dr. Ben and John Henry Clark rolled into one. The man is unbelievable, unbelievable. And his history is too thoroughly documented to debate. And I mean, he could take a teaspoon and reach into a 55-gallon drum of American history and just undress it and pull its panties down and embarrass it and spank it all in one motion. He's tough. He's tough, and he don't bite his tongue either. And he's civil, okay? So you can play for the kids, the grandkids, and the grandparents, and he won't hurt anybody's feelings who is conscious about who they are and where we're at. But Gerald Horne on YouTube and written more than 40 books. The man is incredible, absolutely incredible.
Well, I mean, maybe we can reach out to him and have him on this program sometime.
Oh, he's awesome. A mind blower
to do that. I mean, that's
slavery, Haiti, the Caribbean, the Constitution, the founding of the United States, the American Revolution, the Black Jacobins. you name it, the president's, he's on it. He's on top of it, and he's tough. He's tough. Okay.
And what's important, Yusuf, is us creating the space to say exactly what you just said.
Yeah.
This is the information we have to share with each other whenever we meet, whenever we're at the dinner table or at the coffee shop. What have you read? What are you reading? What is he saying? And I think it's important that we begin to have that be the fundamental purpose and outcome of every encounter. It reminds me, Dr. Hayden, back in the 60s and 70s, even when we were having parties, there was a conscious moment where the music stopped and somebody would say, "This is how I see the world. You know, I have a philosophy and a concept, and my mission is to do A, B, C, and D." And that person would therein challenge other people to think about the moment at hand, and how this moment is a critical link to the evolution, the revolution, the change that we represent and that we are sent to bring. Dr. Hayden, we were reflecting on several ideas. Glad you could join us again. And same thing, is there anything in particular that is on your plate or on your, sort of thinking priority right now? And welcome.
Yeah, well, thank you again. I'm sorry I came in late. Today was several Zoom calls, but Yusuf, I mean, you laid it out right. And what Yusuf did, and Brenda, you weren't back with us in the day, but I always remember at Randy and Marcia Statton's house. Yusuf was there, Al, you were there, because y'all live right across the street from each other. Right. And that's what we did on a weekly basis. And you didn't have to go to a university or whatever the case is. People just had it, and it was coming out the same way Yusuf did it. And so when you were in the community, you were knowledgeable. You didn't just come off the top of your shoulders and things of this nature. You knew what was happening. And one of the big fights that I feel is going on, and I'm going to say it again, is this whole thing around chemical health and mental health. Now, mental health is a little further, but Black chemical health, we just won't move. And many of the reasons, and I said it last week when Doc was on, is that we as a people will not come together. For example, Turning Point's the only Afrocentric program of its size in the Twin Cities. And one of the reasons that we're the only ones is because everybody's trying to get a chip for themselves rather than, because I don't want to be by myself. You follow me? So we have little programs, and we have people who have started sober housing and things of this nature, but we've never got together and said, how do we pull this thing together and we still can work together but have our own peace? And that's what's happening with regards to the sister in North Carolina. We have to react all the time. You know, something comes up and then we're looking at it rather than proact as we're doing now. And that's what this station does. I want to proact. I don't want to be the biggest CD program and Turning Point's just all that is. I want us to have a collaboration so we can meet the needs of, because the majority of African Americans are in CD programs that are ran by white folk. That's crazy. It's crazy. So that's what's going on. It's in my mind, and it was encouraging to come on and hear Yusuf talk about what's going on at Howard. It's just like, and the last part I'll say right now is, isn't it beautiful? These pro basketball players and football players are all going back to HBCUs to coach and to be general managers and these kinds of things. That is just unbelievable. And you can believe that something's going to happen, because these young African American boys and girls are going to start going to Mississippi State, etc., and the Alabamas are going to have to figure out what they're going to do.
And Irv Cross came to McAllister and nobody knew he was even in town.
Or who he was.
Yeah.
You're right. You're right.
Sad.
And now he's passed on.
Yeah. Sad.
And we've got a black general manager and a black coach for Phoenix Suns.
Mhm.
Wow. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I just think that's great. I mean, I'm pulling for Chris Paul, but I just think the entire organization recognizing the talent and the passion that general manager, it's Johnson, I think is his last name, and he also got general manager of the year.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's a good thing.
Peter Hayden, I tell people in my regular stump speech that I remember, the grandparents, the elders saying to us, mind your business, right? And in my case, my grandmother would also say, as she reared me in the church, grandfather was the pastor, but she was the pastor's wife and really the force behind the family. And she would say, and I remember her saying something like, the church business or God's business is the biggest business on earth. And for her to be clear about not only the spiritual mission, but they should be open-eyed or have your eyes open when you examine the revenue streams associated with religion, churches, organization of any kind. So I take that, and when I'm talking about health and wellness and mental health, I say, we have to mind our business, and we have to begin to adopt the mantra, our health is our business. Yes. Our health is our business. And I mean that in the sense of taking personal responsibility for each and every individual about knowing how your body works and how it functions and what you need to do to protect it and to grow it, nurture it in ways that are sustainable, but also look at the mechanics, the economics about health. I say that, like everybody else, I would love to have and be able to take a pill that cures cancer. Take the pill, no more cancer, right? But we're not there yet. It's not developed. But the path towards development of that science is a path that creates institutions like the Mayo Clinic, and that pulls together not millions, but billions of dollars over a period of time to marshal human and material resources to focus on a problem and to discover all kinds of things along the way. Well, if that's the case, Dr. Hayden, we have been described and defined by our negative experience, by the disparities, right? Health, mental health, education. Isn't it up to us to turn that situation into an opportunity and to look at the business of us not being the least healthy in our state, and look at the business of what it takes to make us the healthiest in the state, because we're paying attention and that we are benefiting from bringing our mental and organizing and family acumen, interest, genius into play for being part of the solution side of the equation rather than simply being relegated to being the problem. So I think that what you have done and what you have referred to in describing the decision of Ta-Nehisi Coates and of
Nicole Hannah-Jones
to take agency, and to move within and build institutions in our community is a reflection of us moving in that direction even more. Dr. Hayden, what do you think? And Yusef and Brenda, jump in.
Let me jump in here and build on what Dr. Hayden said, because we have absolutely no business unnecessarily duplicating or competing with somebody else that's doing the same thing in our community. And what Dr. Hayden is talking about is how do we take a gulp out of some of these issues by collaborating and working together rather than taking this series of little tiny nibbles with no idea about what one another are doing, what works, what doesn't, and why should we have to make the same mistakes that other people make without learning and growing from the mistakes that they've made. Now, Dr. Hayden, has done so much through Turning Point for so many decades that if he gets a contract from Hennepin County or the state of Minnesota or the Office of Minority Health or the McKnight Foundation gets a grant, we ought to be calling him up and congratulating him and asking him, what can we do to help? Or if we learn that he's applying for one, we ought to be calling and saying, can you use a letter of support? I'm the vice president of the Minnesota Dakota Area Conference NAACP. And people call me all the time, oh, my son pled guilty 6 months ago and he's in prison in Fargo and you got to get him out tomorrow. They've done him wrong. And I'm like, I wish you'd have called us 6 months ago before he copped a plea. We might have been able to put something in place, but it's kind of hard to do something retroactive like that 6 months after the fact. We get calls all the time from the police saying, look, would you write us a letter and help us get a $5 million grant so we can get body cameras or so we can get a $3 million grant to do this? We never get those calls from the community asking us for help. From the state, or I'm on the executive committee of the St. Paul chapter. There's a Minneapolis chapter. You need to be using institutions in the community for leverage that, have 108, 109, 110-year history in this community, going back to 1911, when the Twin Cities NAACP was first created, So call on us, ask us for support when you're putting a project together or you need a letter of support and you just need a letter of reference, call and ask us. I'm happy to help. I know all three of those chapters that I mentioned help. We now have 6 NAACP chapters throughout the state of Minnesota. We got Minneapolis, St. Paul, St. Cloud, we've got Duluth, we got Rochester, and we just opened up a chapter in Mankato. So we have every region in the state of Minnesota covered. We also have a youth chapter for young people under 18 in St. Paul. And we're trying to breathe life back into these and pass the opportunities. We don't have problems. We have challenges and opportunities. We're trying to pass those challenges and opportunities on to the next generation of torchbearers. Okay. And there are young people that, there's a young brother over here named Mackay who's opened up 2 truth centers in TRUCE, who's working with these young gangbangers and he's call them knuckleheads, to try and keep them from shooting one another or, pulling out their straight razors and cutting everybody up. We had a house party over here with 100 people in it and strippers on poles and 170 shots fired within 2 hours. The police ran out of them little tents you put in the street next to the bullets. That's how many shots were fired. Shot up senior housing, shot up the businesses in the neighborhood, shot up people's cars, shot up everything. And we need to get out in front of some of this kind of violence because the Indians tell a story and they say that there was 3 Indians that went hunting at Minnehaha Falls and it was real early in the morning and the sun was coming up and it had just finished raining and they were admiring the rainbow in the sky. And all of a sudden they heard some little babies crying, and they looked around and coming down Minnehaha Creek, they saw some little indigenous children in baskets headed for the waterfall. And the first one jumped in the water and grabbed it and started handing them to the second one. And the second one was stacking them up like cordwood on the bank. And he told the first one, he said, look, while you're in there, start teaching them how to swim. Okay. And the third one started walking away and they said, where you going, brother? Come back here. And he said, look, they're not coming so fast that y'all can't stand here and get them out of the water and stack them up on the bank. I'm going to work my way back upstream and try to prevent whoever it is from putting any more in. Okay. That's collaboration. Okay. Where we're not only doing the descriptive and saying, here's the issue, here's the issue, let's deal with it. But they're saying, here's the prescription for how we resolve it and how we prepare and plan for the future so we can move beyond this and be about nation building and cut out this dumb stuff, okay? Because these young kids don't feel like they have anything to lose. They don't feel like they have any future. You say, what are you doing? Nothing. Where are you going? Nowhere. What do you have to look forward to? Nothing more. You know, what can you do for them? Not a doggone thing. Okay. So, you know, we need 1,000 Spike Mosses out there in them streets working with some of these knuckleheads. And, you know, we need people pointing them in the right direction. We need to be getting them meaningful jobs. We need to be making certain that they stay in school and that they're engaged while they're in school. And then we need to try and move them into the trades or Summit Academy OIC or junior college or community college or four-year college, so that they become assets in our community rather than liability. Because the seniors, when they leave church and they're walking home, if they see young black kids coming down the street, they cross the street and walk up the other side of the block because they're scared to death of their own grandchildren, you know? And that's an indictment against the future of our community, and we cannot afford it. We gotta move on it. And I'm sorry for rambling.
Oh, no, not rambling at all. I think what you're saying is exactly on point, Yusef, and that's what we're here for, is to use this platform to lay out our understanding, our expectations, and to affirm our duty and our right to act with a sense of agency and a sense of purpose. Dr. Hayden, Brenda, go ahead, either one of you, if you want to add to or shift the conversation.
You know, I wanted to go back to when you interviewed Tyrone Terrell, and I use it all of the time in writing when he talks about doing one block at a time and making for sure that we're not trying to do the entire canvas. We're just trying to hit just one block to get to the young people, to protect the elders. And we had elders in our neighborhood. And Dr. Hayden, Tyrone talked about Alvin Brooks. And I'm sure you remember him.
And he's still out there.
He was unbelievable. And we looked up to him. And he was not afraid of speaking up. You know, the mayor, anyone. We need our elders to be protected, but we also need their voices. And I respected so much. George Perry was our principal, and we looked up to him so much. And I remember we didn't have book bags, we had satchels. And he would see us and he would say, Brenda Lyle, you got a book in that satchel? Yes, Mr. Perry. And we were reading all of the time. Our kids don't know their history. When I did an article, and it was, I was just telling Al, I can't believe I've been writing for Insight News for a year almost. And one of my first articles was on Timbuktu. So I sent it to some of my former students, and they got back with me and they'd say, be great. I hadn't even heard of the scholars in the desert, you know, so the schools have got to step up, and we have to organize how we can present material and relevant direction for them within the classroom. And that goes back to training teachers.
Yes. Critical.
And if we haven't trained them, and you know, when you look at 87 or 90% of teachers are white, well, they're not going to be teaching Timbuktu. They don't even know about it. So, you know, we just have to look at training mental clinicians and psychologists and social workers so we can have all of these in the school, because it's a different day and age. COVID just took our breath away, and we have to get back on track. I just saw on the news at 6 o'clock this morning, 100 people or more were shot in Chicago over the weekend. and 18 were killed.
Mhm.
So we have to ask ourselves, when does it stop?
I think it stops, Brenda, when we figure out how to strengthen the institutions that we have created that sustain and protect and gird our families, our individuals, and our culture. And so I raised the question, what if Turning Point had a staff of, say, 1,000 people?
Yep.
What would Turning Point do if you could train 1,000 men and women in counseling, in social work, in mental health, and you could deploy 1,000 people at professional market rates to provide mental health services across the breadth and depth of our community? What if the Urban League of Minneapolis of Twin Cities could employ 5,000 people, all of whom are assigned to specific parts of the community, specific neighborhoods, where their mission is to, as Tyrone suggested, know everybody on a particular block. I think Bernard Powell's mantra, among many, was each one teach one, but also ghetto or gold mine, the choice of yours. How do we adopt this attitude of awareness and consciousness about our communities so that we begin to see our communities for the wealth that they possess, and that wealth is us, the human capital that we represent, where we begin to value that differently and genuinely, and be intentional about measuring and managing our relationships in ways that are measurable because they are intentional and financial.
See, Al, what you're talking about is a capacity inventory.
Mhm.
And the only thing that the broader community has ever done in our community is measure the deficiencies.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And we really do need to acknowledge and take stock of the capacity that we do have and build on that. Like I said earlier, we don't have problems. We have challenges and opportunities.
Yusef, that's what Dr. Powell said last week. I was speaking in a way that was, I have anger, Dr. Powell, so sometimes you have to excuse me. But he did say exactly what you said.
Don't we all?
Where we are now and what we've gone through. But let me just say a couple of things. Brenda, Dr. Powell, McFarlane, we're all from Kansas City. At the same time, Al, me, you, and Yusef come out of the way. You follow me? And so, and when Seal and Gwen laid that piece out, we're the last of that. We don't have those mentors and people right now. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to lead and go a step further. But here's what my concern is as we continue this piece that we're talking about. My step is what you said about if Turning Point had the opportunity to bring 1,000 clinicians, chemical health, mental health, all of that, we would change all of Minnesota. But you see, and I'm certainly not, I want to be careful in a sense, but the people that we deal with, called Hennepin County, or in Kansas City, Jackson County, know if you have a North Point, a couple of other agencies like that, then you don't get to our goal. Because I'm not saying North Point doesn't do a good job, or Southside, or the program Ramsey doesn't do a good job, but it's always a stickler in there to stop you from getting where you want to go. And that would be my concern. Unless we say we are going to unite no matter what, that's not going to happen.
Dr. Hayden, let me give you an example, and Burnell can kind of back me on this. In 1990, our alma mater, Central High School, built a new school. It was a $32 million high school right on Linwood and Indiana. I was the curriculum coordinator. Robert Jackson came and got me. He said, "You're one of the best technical writers, and I need someone that I can trust." So I had a $282,000 budget. That school was on 60 Minutes, and it lasted only 4 years.
Mm.
And reason being is that Jefferson City was so angry about that school being built in the Black neighborhood. And then we couldn't get the neighborhood to step up and to protest what they were trying to do. And it just went down the tube. We have to unite. We have to have a voice. This young lady, Nicole, made a statement, but there are other statements that have to be made. We heard an interview the other day from a pastor that said, "I know I'm supposed to be in the spots where they're doing all the shooting, but I'm scared. I trust God, but," and I think I wrote that line, "stray bullets don't have a name on them." So, as you said, we've got a lot of work to do. And Yusef, I can't believe this party that you just described. How painful to even know that something like that would happen.
Mm-hmm.
And that it would be tolerated.
And 100 people in the party and nobody saw nothing.
Wow.
Brunel, jump in.
Now that I'm back online, I don't know what happened. My computer shut down. But
the FBI was changing hard drives, Brunel.
This has been an absolutely scintillating conversation. And perhaps better because I was able to watch it as opposed to participate in it. But coming in late, I do want to add one point, and that is simply to underscore a point which I hope we'll have an opportunity on a future show to take up. I believe that there must be people of color, and specifically African Americans, at every table where there is a seat in any institution in this country. There are enough of us. That ought to be our goal. That doesn't mean that there should not be Blacks who are going to make a decision to go to Howard or to build grassroots institutions, but that is not enough. There must be African Americans at every table in the country where there are decisions being made about people of color.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's powerful. We're almost out of time today. Let's do this. Brunel, give me about a minute or two in your impressions on the latest developments with Rudy Giuliani. We talked last week briefly about him being suspended in New York.
Yes.
And now that's gone another step, correct?
Yes. The suspension in New York followed an inquiry that was, complaints that were made and weighed by the lawyer disciplinary body in New York. And upon a recommendation to the court agreed that his license should be suspended pending a hearing on the charges that were brought before it. Now, the courts in Washington, D.C. have said, so you have charges pending against you in New York. Until those matters are resolved, we're not going to allow you to practice law in D.C. because we think that the charges that have been levied against you in New York are serious and that they are based upon credible evidence. And so that means that Rudy Giuliani has taken another step, or at least has been pushed towards a point where he will soon lose his license to practice. I do not believe that he will prevail once formal hearings are held. I think that it will only get worse. And my regret is only that it took too long. And I'm worried that New York would not have taken its steps, but for the fact that the Attorney General in Pennsylvania threw the entire weight of his staff into the fight and put a complaint before New York that was so serious that it could not be ignored.
And the headlines today was Trump called him a drunk and called him off the cuff or something. I just want them to get him. That's what I'm waiting on.
Well, I think that the charges that were levied against the Trump Corporation are serious charges. And I know that there are those who are saying, well, they weren't charges against Trump himself, they were against his corporation. The people who are saying that are people who do not understand how the criminal law process works. You begin small and you build on that, and you build on it by flipping individuals along the way and getting them to testify against higher ups. And so it is a slow process, but it is a methodical process. And I believe that it is on its way to a successful prosecution of the Trump organization, because not only has the evidence been put forward that there has been 15 years of consistent wrongdoing by the corporation, but in addition, they kept 2 sets of books. And if you were keeping 2 sets of books in a tax matter, it shows that you had guilty knowledge. You knew that what you were doing was wrong. And so the Trump Corporation is not going to be able to beat these charges. And I think that there is a very good chance that as the press reveals, that Weisselberg will come forward and that he will begin to provide the direct evidence, become the key witness who the prosecution needs. And once that's in place, Trump will have his day in court.
Burnell, he also cheated his niece out of a great deal of money when his brother died, and they turned over dozens of boxes of records, and she's made those available to the Southern District of New York. And they have a lot of damning information on Trump and the Trump empire.
Listen, we're out of time. We're out of time. This has been a great conversation as always. We'll see you next week.
Be safe, all.
This is Conversations with Al McFarlane.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye, everyone.
Oh, Queen Justice, where are you? Did they beat you up or no? Lock you underground, take the crown away from you?
Oh, Lady Liberty, red, white, and blue. Did they take your dignity with their bigotry? Teach you that you're born to lose.
Free or guilty, it's gonna get filthy. Better believe, roll up your sleeves. It's gonna get rough, it's gonna be tough. We all agree, we've had enough.
We've had enough
of all the rules you break.
We've had enough
of all the money you make.
We've had enough.
No more life at stake.
We've had enough.
This is a proclamation.
It's been 400 years and we're 400 late. Together we stand from state to state, going back in time.
people won't wait. Action, no more distraction. Every step we take, we gain traction. If it can happen to one, it can happen to all. United we stand, divided we fall. Free or guilty, it's gonna get filthy. Better believe, roll up your sleeves. It's gonna get rough, it's gonna be tough. We all agree, we've had enough. We've had enough
of all the rules you were breaking.
We had enough
of all the money you were making.
We had enough.
No more life gets taken.
We had enough.
This is a proclamation.
Free or guilty, it's gonna get filthy. You better believe, just roll up your sleeves. It's gonna get rough, it's gonna be tough. We all agree, we've had enough. We've had enough of all the rules you're breaking. We've had enough. All the money you're making.
We've had enough.
No more life gets taken.